Hello and welcome. Today we are digging into a really interesting paradox, one that's all about Gen Z, the future of work, and one single trait that could pretty much define, well, everything.
The world is changing so fast, it's almost impossible to keep up. And because of that, pretty much every employer out there is asking the same question. Is the next wave of talent actually ready to adapt and grow? The answer really boils down to something called a growth mindset. So, does Gen Z have it? Let's take a look.
Okay, so let's get into this core idea, which comes from the brilliant Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck. She figured out that all of us, you and me included, see our own smarts through one of two filters. And these mindsets, they don't just, affect our confidence. They actually change how we approach just about everything: learning, work, and life itself. So, on one side, you've got the growth mindset. If you're in this camp, you see a tough problem as a fun challenge. Failure isn't the end, it's a lesson. You genuinely believe you can get better at something just by trying. But then there's the other side, the fixed mindset. This is the belief that our talents are just set in stone. If you're not good at it right away, you think you never will be. And failure, oh, it's absolutely brutal because it feels like a final verdict on who you are. And look, this isn't just some abstract feel-good idea. This has real-world consequences. The World Economic Forum is projecting that by 2025, we're going to have a 64% deficit, a huge gap in workers who have the right skills for the jobs of the future. The only way to close that gap is for people to constantly learn and adapt. That is the definition of a growth mindset. So yeah, the stakes are incredibly high.
Right, so naturally, all eyes are on Gen Z. I mean, they were born into a world of nonstop change, so you'd think they would be the ultimate growth mindset generation, right? And honestly, when you first look at the data, it seems to scream yes.
Now, take a look at this. It's from a survey of Russian students, but the finding is something we see everywhere. They were asked what they thought about this statement. For me, it is more important to learn something than to get excellent grades. And look at that response. Almost everyone agrees. That is classic growth mindset talk, loving the process, not just the perfect score. And then you see the other side of the same coin right here. This time, the statement was, I don't want to admit it, but I would rather get high marks than learn something. And again, look at that. The vast majority shot it down. They're basically saying loud and clear that actual learning is way more important than just getting an A. So, after seeing those charts, you think, okay, great, problem solved. Gen Z is ready, the case is closed. But what happens when you stop asking them what they think and you start watching what they actually do? Well, this is where the whole story just takes a massive plot twist. I mean, all the signs seem to point in one direction. But the researchers, they decided to poke a little deeper. They moved beyond the surveys and set up a real-world experiment with the exact same students. And what they discovered, well, it was a pretty huge disconnect. Now, this is where it gets really fascinating. Let's break it down. In the survey, they said they'd pick a complex task over a simple one, but in the experiment, the vast majority chose the easy option. They said learning was the most important thing, but then they actively dodged projects where they'd have to learn something new. They said they weren't afraid of a challenge, but when offered a chance to try a tough logic competition, they backed out. Let's just put a hard number on that gap. A full 37%. That's more than a third of the students who specifically said they'd choose a harder task on paper turned right around and picked the easier one when it was a real choice. That's a huge gap between who they say they are and what they actually do. So why? What's going on here? Well, the researchers concluded that this is a classic sign of a hidden fixed mindset. It's not about the desire to actually be better, it's about the desire to appear better. See, they know the right answers to give on a survey to sound good, but when there's a real chance of failure, that fixed mindset kicks into gear and they retreat to what's safe. It's better to look smart than to risk trying and becoming smarter.
Okay, so if this say versus do trap can catch anyone, what's the fix? Well, the answer isn't about blaming a generation. It's about finding a proactive strategy that can help anybody at any age close that gap. And it's an incredibly powerful idea called job crafting. And to really get this, let's start with an old parable. You've got three stonecutters all doing the exact same work. Someone asks them what they're doing. The first one says, "I'm carrying a heavy rock." He just sees the task. The second says, "I'm earning a living for my family." He sees the job. But the third one, he looks up and says, "I am building a great temple." He sees the meaning. Same work, totally different mindset.
And that is the heart of job crafting. It's the act of redesigning your own job from the inside. Instead of just doing the work you're assigned, you start to intentionally shape it so that it connects better with your own values, your own skills, and your own passions. You essentially decide to become that third stonecutter. So, how do you actually do this? I know this model might look a little complicated at first glance, but it really just boils down to three main areas you can control. You can craft your tasks, that's changing what you do. You can craft your relationships, that's changing who you work with. And maybe most importantly, you can craft your cognitions, that's changing how you think about your work and its purpose. But here's the catch. Being proactive can go one of two ways. If you start with a sense of meaning, your why, you're on what we could call the light side. Your actions are focused, you use your skills to make a real difference, and you build supportive relationships. But if you don't have that purpose, you risk slipping to the dark side. That's where you get exhausting crafting. You're busy, but you're not getting anywhere, and you end up building dependent relationships just to feel more secure. And that really brings us to the big takeaway here. The future of work isn't just something that's going to happen to us. It's something we can actively build, no matter what our job title is. It's all about making a shift from being a passive person reacting to things to being an active person who creates things.
I love this quote because it just nails the whole spirit of a growth mindset and job crafting. It's not about sitting around and waiting for the perfect opportunity to fall into your lap. It's about taking the job you have right now and actively making it more meaningful and more you. So in the end, this whole debate about Gen Z's mindset, it's kind of a distraction. The only question that really matters is a personal one for you. Are you just reacting to your world, carrying stones because you're told to, or are you actively trying to craft it, looking for the temple that you're helping to build? The choice really is all yours.